We're learning Parshas Nasa. We said before that yesterday we learned about the sota, and we learned a beautiful explanation from the Or HaChaim Kadosh on the sota, but we didn't get a chance to finish it. And today we'll see if we can learn the rest of the interesting topics of this week's portion Torah reading, which are as follows: the blessing that the Kohanim make, the blessing, the priestly blessing. Yivrecha Hashem v'yishmerecha. And there's also, before that, there's the law of the Nazir. And then there is the gifts that all the heads of the tribes brought to the temple. So let's have a look. Here we go. So if you remember yesterday, the Or HaChaim asked a question: what do you have to have? The Or HaChaim asked a question: what do you have to have? A second. Yeah. What do you have to have the water for? And what does it say? Holy water. And what do you have to put the dirt into the water and give this lady to drink? And then you take a parchment and you write on it a few paragraphs from the Bible. This about this idea of the sota. You write it and then you wash it off in the water. You make her drink the water, and she becomes. So essentially, what he said was, if you remember yesterday, we said that this whole story, this whole saga over here between this man that suspects his wife, and he takes her to the temple and she denies it, and this is really sort of a reenactment of the original sin, if you want to call it the first sin. I guess you can call it the original sin because it was the first sin. Adam ate from the tree. And because Adam ate from the tree, so this sort of confused the whole entire world afterwards. We spoke about this before. And that's basically where all the other religions come from, and this obsession with going to heaven and selfishness and even the spiritual things. That's what all came from. So basically, Chava, Adam's wife, Eve, she basically, I do want to, let's try to find a not too harsh word for it. She confused the whole world for all time by what she did. And as a result, there's the possibility of sin nowadays. And people like to sin, feels good. So this is like the quintessential example of this. This is just the reenactment of that sin, that Chava went against God's will. So here we have the husband, who he sort of takes the place of God over here. And Chava, she also takes the place of the Jewish people, but she also takes the place of the negative side of the woman. That she has this influence over her husband, so she can use this influence for good, or she can do what Chava did. So it said that really God, when he created the world, remember we said this, God, when he created the world, he wanted to make a dwelling in this lower world. And that's what it means, the lower, when he separated the world, the upper waters and the lower waters, that was on the second day. So he wanted God wanted man to fix this up so that the upper waters and the lower waters would merge. But Chava, Eve, by means of her sin, so she made even greater separation. And that's why people cry nowadays. This is the water, these are the lower waters that come because of sin, and people sin because they enjoy it, they like it. The world is a very confusing place, and that's because of Eve. So therefore, this idea of making her drink the water, this is fixing up the crime that she did with the water. That's why it says that God said to write this on a parchment and wipe it off, put it, and wipe it off in the water. And then also with the dirt, there's a question if you put it in there after you put the dirt on or not. You have to take dirt from the ground of the temple. And the reason, this is to give power, the words of the Torah will give her power in order to do this whole process now. And so God said also she has to make a meal offering from animal food, from barley. And the reason is, and he asked the question before, why does this show on something that's so bad? I mean, the offering of the Omer is also from barley. This is so bad, barley. So he says the reason is because wheat is a better type of a grain. And that was what happened with Cain. If you remember Cain in the beginning of the world, it was Cain and Hevel. So it says that it says that Cain, he brought a grain to God. Cain and Hevel, remember that? So Cain, he brought grain to God. God didn't like it. And Hevel, he brought the best of his flocks. He brought flocks. That was Abel, Cain and Abel. So it says Cain in the beginning, he brought also this grains and in the beginning of the world. And this was a result from the sin of Adam and his wife. And it's why did it even come in Cain's mind to bring a secondary, not so good offering to the Creator? This already came from Adam, that Adam thought that, maybe God is important, but maybe I'm also maybe a little more important. But this reminds the sin that caused this crying of the water to be cursed, and also to be cursed, the ground was cursed. It says that the ground was cursed because of man. And this is what it says, Michan Zicharon Maskeras Avon. That's what it says. It is a bread offering, a meal offering to remember the sin. The sin of what? The sin of Adam, of Eve, and the sin of Cain, that he brought vegetables to God. It says he brought fruits, what is grains. Okay, then you give the woman to drink the water. When the water comes into her womb, so this either can cleanse her, in other words, shows that she's really essentially good, or that she's not, and that this causes her to, in any case, become clean from the sin. This sin came originally from the serpent. This was the first sin that was ever done in the history of the world. And this pushed God's presence away from the world. According to this, now, if a person finds his enemy and sends him away, then he will, which in this case is talking about the evil impulse. So this is, like it says, someone who comes to kill him, you have to kill him, you have to protect yourself and kill the person first. This is why this woman has to go through this whole process in order to fix up the sin of the first woman and also of Cain. Good. Cain, her son, wayward son. Her son killed her other son. All right, let's go a little bit further over here. Okay, then he finishes the whole process with the woman. And if she's pure, then she gives seed. And we went through all of that. Let's do the next commandment, which is the Nazir. God said to Moshe, speak to the Jewish people and say to them, if a man or a woman decides that he wants to take a vow of to be a Nazir, Now, Nazir also means a crown. The word of Nazir means a crown. Nazir Kodesh. So Nazir means like to be a crown, to be shining. So it says, Ki yafle, when a person yafle means to be like very high. Spiritual. Why is this section about the Nazir right next to the thing of the Sota? Sota is terrible. Right? The Sota was really bad. I mean, she really did a bad thing. And this is something that we'll see is really good. The man decides he wants to separate himself from the world to a certain degree. We'll learn not too much, okay? We're going to learn about this in the Sifrona. Let's see it. We'll go and we'll see if we can find it. To tell you, why is this right after the thing about the Sota? We have the Nazir. To tell you that anyone who sees a Sota when she is in her shame, he will make a vow not to drink wine. Because one of the reasons that this lady was suspicious is because she drank wine, and the wine makes a person loose and physical. Can make a person very physical. Shehu maybe the adeniyah, because this brings to licentiousness. Wine. Neder Nazir, he makes a neder, a vow of a Nazir. Ein Nazirus b'kol makom ela precious. Nazir means to separate yourself, to make yourself holy. Also here, he separates himself from wine. And he becomes the Hazir Lashem. He becomes a Nazir to vow himself off to God. So it's from the world to God. Lahavdil atzmo mina yain. Why? L'shem shemayim, for the sake of God. He's not separating himself from wine because he realizes that when he drinks wine, he gets violent or something like that. No, he knows that when he drinks wine, he gets attached too much to the world. He's drawn after the world. That's what it says. Yafrish atzmo minav hevle tainugos bnei adam. He separates himself from the empty pleasures of people. So he says, from wine and from sheikhar, he removes himself. What is wine and sheikhar? Interestingly enough, if a Nazir, he can drink vodka and other things like that. It's just wine. Anything that comes from grapes, he can't drink. It seems that wine used to be a little bit different back then than it is now. It used to be really, really terrible, very powerful. And wine had a special thing. We see the same thing also with the Ben Soror V'mor. It's only wine. Wine v'sheichar, it says, chomer chadat v'atik. Wine means new, and sheichar means that it's old. That wine is, in sheichar, wine is made from sheichar when it's old. That's what wine is. So wine is, chadat means new and old. So in other words, wine is the only thing that's for and anything that's soaked in wine, that's also the same thing. Water that there was grapes were soaked in it and it fermented. Interestingly enough, you can't even eat grapes also, not just wine. And just keep them away from grapes. So it says the Sifrono is very interesting over here. He says that here this person wants to be close to God. So what does he do? He doesn't drink wine. That's it. He says, well, yeah, he doesn't defile himself and he lets his hair grow. How is that making him holy? So the Sifrono says like this: Lo yisagef atzmo. He doesn't mortify himself, but psalm with fasting, shemama'at, that makes him, how do you say, thin, loses weight. I'm sorry, that when a person fasts and he does these things, as it makes him that he's not happy, he feels miserable, and that prevents him from serving God properly. Like the rabbis say, lo yitzer gufo, a person should not mortify his body, kamakat perushim, like the self afflictions of the like the priests of the non-Jews, kaminag tzivuim v'komerim, like the what are the priests and the what are they called, the hermits and the monks, monks. Only has to do is separate himself from wine. Tifla. In this, he minimizes, makes a little bit less his, how do you say, looseness. Ma'od. It can very much limit his loose, how do you say, drunken attitude. And this subdues his selfish impulses. But on the other hand, if a person does not drink wine, it doesn't make him weak or unhappy, right? It's just that wine makes a person, gives a person a certain degree of joy and looseness. Now, wine can be a very good thing. It can be, right? I remember some people told me that even in the time of the prohibition in America, as religious Jews, they had permission to buy as much wine as they needed. They had to, I guess, prove how much wine they needed for religious activities. Well, so wine can be a very good thing. On the other hand, wine can open a person's heart, make a person. It says it increases in friendliness and in openness. Sitting and saying, making l'chaim. It says God lagima shema karevet. But on the other hand, it's very easy to fool oneself with wine. And people can get drunk and get up. Okay, call Yamein Israel only from wine. All the days of his, anything that's made from wine or anything that's made from the shells of wine, of grapes, or the meat of grapes, right? They're not allowed to drink. All of the days, he's not allowed to shave his head. He can't cut his hair. It says that if his hair gets too heavy on him, that he's allowed to. That says that even Samson was a Nazir and he used to cut his hair once a year or something. Kodesh Gadol pair of this. all the days of this nefesh mate lo yavo. That's the third thing. He's not allowed to defile himself for a dead person. He can't come too close to a dead body or to be in the same room with a dead body, even including those that a Kohen is yes allowed to, his father, his mother, his brother, his sister. He's not allowed to defile himself with them because the crown, the Nazir of God is on his head. Even though the fact of the matter is, he can't, for some reason, it doesn't have over here his wife and his daughter or his sons. It only says his father's mother, his brother, and his sister. But the fact is, he's not allowed to defile himself for his children either. And for his wife, he is allowed to defile himself. So some people say that Nazir, that includes this. Okay. The idea is that he's separating, he is holy. All the days of his nose, he's going to be holy to God. Holy to God. That's what it says. Yizkel, or what does it mean to be holy to God? A Nazir merits to a light of life, v'liyot muchan lahavin, that now he is ready. It's like prophecy. He's going to be able to receive and to teach like the holy people of the generation. Therefore, it seems Shekivan, that God has intended when he says this, that you're going to be holy for God. In other words, he's going to receive now inspiration from God. And that God will fulfill his words. Like it says, Ani maskim lahadiro b'nazir. This shows that God is agreeing that you did a good thing, that you made yourself into a nazir. And this nazir, what does he want from God? All he's asking is, I don't want anything else. All I want for myself is just that I should do what God wants. That's all he's requesting. So he's totally holy to God. He doesn't want money. He does not asking for anything. Just that I should be able to serve God. It's not easy to serve God if you don't have money, and especially if you're not healthy. So it says, whatever you want me to do, God, that's what I'm willing to do. But it would be nice if you did things the way I wanted also. But my interest is only to serve you. It's as if somebody dies suddenly and he becomes impure. So what does he do? He has to cut off his hair on that day, and on the Gilach Rosho B'Yom Tarato B'Yom HaShavi, when on the seventh day, a person that becomes impure, so they have to sprinkle it from a dead person, so they have to sprinkle on him the ashes of the paraduma on, Yom Shlishi and Yom Shvi'i. On the third day, he starts to count days whenever he wants. He counts, and then from the third day of this counting and the seventh day, says, and this on the eighth day when he's already pure, so he brings 2 pigeons and to the holy temple, and yes, and then he makes the coin. The vasa coin echad lachatas. He takes these 2 birds and sacrifices the coin. Sacrifices one for a chatas offering, one from an ola. In any case, good. He makes these sacrifices. Since this person was not careful about a dead person, coming close to a dead person. And he has to make a new vow. He has to renew his vow. And he also brings a sheep that's 1 year old for an asham. And the first days will go away. The days, whatever he was, let's say he took a vow that he's going to be a Nazir for 1 year. And right near the end of the year, he got impure from a dead person. So all those days that he kept fall away. And he has to start over all the time from the beginning again. This is the law. Okay, that's what about when he finishes his Nazir? He takes a vow he's going to be a Nazir. If a person just says, I'm going to be a Nazir, and he doesn't say how long, then the minimum is 30 days. So he finishes his 30 days, or let's say he says, I'm going to be a Nazir for a year or for 10 years or whatever. As soon as he finishes his time, then this is what he does. On the day he finishes Naziro, they take this person to the entrance of the tabernacle or the entrance of the holy temple, and they sacrifice a sacrifice to God. What is it? A sheep, 1 year old, a tamim. One of them will be an ola and a kipsa. This is a ram and a sheep, for etc. And an ayil, echad tamim. That's a little older for a shlomim. Ayil is older sheep. Visal matzo solis. Then he brings also a basket of unleavened bread, and he soaks it in oil, and also other type rikiki matzot, other type of a bread offering, which is smeared with oil, and their meal offerings and their wine offerings. Now, of course, you're going to ask a question: what is it? What do they have to do all this for? So the answer is that when a person wants to make a sacrifice, so he's putting himself in tune with the spiritual aspects of God. So the essence of God, the person has to, if let's say a person did a sin, so he has to confess to God. But meanwhile, he's sort of rearranged and disordered all these spiritual worlds. So he has to bring an offering, and the offering has to be very, very exact. And that's what the time of the temple, you could do God's will, something like we have nowadays with tefillin, right? Your tefillin have to be very, very exact. The letters have to be exactly right. So he brings the sacrifices, the open offerings, etc., etc. He cuts his hair. He cuts his hair at the entrance of the Ohel Moed, and they put this hair that he cut. They put it underneath his offering. They put it underneath the offering, and there's a pot. He boils it. The Kohen takes this. He boils this offering that he made from this sheep, and he boils it. The Kohen takes this boiled leg of the sacrifice from the ayil, from the sheep, and one of these breads, and he puts it, and he puts the hair of the. First of all, he lifts up these offerings. Then he puts the hair underneath the pot and he burns it. So let's see if we can have Rashi over here. We have Rashi. Gilach, he cuts his hair. He says he cuts his hair. Where does he cut his hair? At the entrance of the temple. In this case, it was the tabernacle. It says that he first of all slaughters this sheep, this ram that he has, and petach Ohel Moed, and then he puts the hair that he's cut. He had his hair. He didn't cut his hair for how long his vow was. He puts that under tachat adud, underneath the pot, she'u mavashel bo, that he's boiling this leg in. And by the way, this is where they learn this whole idea of the 60. The things are negated in 60 because in the leg there's also the sciatic nerve or something. What's it called? The Gita Nasha, and they say that why is it permissible to eat this? The Gita Nasha is forbidden. Well, it says it must be that it's bottled with 60. That's number 6. Okay. So therefore, because they would boil this in the azara, this is the outer part of the temple before you get even to the altar. Litol Kohen the Zorah after it was boiled, and then he lifts it up in front of God. That's what the Nazir does. The Kohen takes this Zorah B'Shela, this leg that was boiled, and he offers up to God. And this is the law of the Nazir, that he has offered himself to God, and he doesn't shave, he doesn't drink wine or anything connected to wine, and he doesn't defile himself for a dead person, as long as Asher Yidor, Ken Yasel Torah in Israel, as long as he was made the vow for, is that's what he has to keep his vow, that all that time. Daber al Aaron ben Av Lemor. Now we're a new topic, the blessing of the Kohanim. The blessing of the Kohanim. We're not going to get to the next part. I would like to. By the way, just for your information, we're certainly not going to get to that, is the Haftorah. The Haftorah of this week's Torah portion. Very interesting Haftorah. This is one of the few Haftorahs that is not from the prophets. It's from the book of Judges, and it tells about the sort of the last judge. There were 13 judges, or 14 if you count Devorah. There was 13 judges of the Jewish people from the time they entered the land of Israel until King Saul came along, and he was the king. 14. And the last of these judges, the last of the Shoftim, they were called judges because they just told the Jewish people what to do. So the last of them was Samson, the famous Samson, Shimshon. And of course, Samson was a Nazir. Samson was, he didn't cut his hair. Rashi, the Rambam said he was a special type of Nazir, that he could drink wine, he could defile himself for dead people. That's why he killed so many people. But it was, at least for his hair, he didn't cut his hair. And so that's the story of Samson. Samson and his mother and father, Manoach, and they asked for a child, and the angel came to them and talked to them. And Samson, it doesn't have any of the interesting things about how Samson, killed all the police team, and they tied the foxes' tails together, and strange story, the story of Samson. Very, very strange story with Delilah. Anyways, that's our Haftorah. So when you read the Haftorah, you should go over it in English, at least in English, and you'll see a very interesting story. It leaves a lot of questions. Daber al Aaron said to Aaron and his sons, and they say, this is how they should bless the Jewish people. And they should say to them like this, 3 blessings. God should bless you and protect you. First blessing. Second blessing. God should shine his face on you and give you free gifts. Grace you. Third, God should lift his face on you and give you peace. And God, I will put my name on the Jewish people and I will bless them. I will bless them. Rashi brings, there's 2 opinions. Who God will bless who? Who's God going to bless? So some people say the Kohanim will bless the Jewish people and I will bless the Jewish people. And some people say the Kohanim, the priests, they will bless the Jewish people and I will bless the Kohanim. Because the poor Kohanim, they're blessing everybody. Who gives them a blessing? So it says, don't worry about it. God says, I'll give them a blessing. It's Rashi says, I never rechti Yisrael. And Vaskim ala Kohanim, I will agree what the Kohanim say. Davar acher, another opinion. Ani avarachem, I will bless the Kohanim. The Kohanim, they'll bless the Jews, and I'll bless them. And we have a couple of interesting things. I mean, this whole thing is really pretty interesting, but after this, the blessing of the Kohanim, we have what everybody, all the heads of the tribes, the 12 tribes, they brought to the holy temple, beginning from the first day the temple was open. That was the first day of Nisan. That was the day when Nadav and Avihu, that they died tragically. So on that same day, also, Nachshon ben Aminadav, he brought his offering. And then every day thereafter, the heads of the tribes brought a special a multi-offering to the tabernacle. And interestingly enough, it was exactly the same thing. Everybody brought the exact same thing, right? What did they bring? So let's just say it just quickly, and because I want to go back to the blessing of the Kohanim. The Nasi Israel, they sacrificed their sacrifice, and they brought their sacrifices in front of God. What did they bring? Sheish eglot tzav, 6 covered wagons. Shnei asar bakar, 12 oxes. Agala al shnei anasim, 1 wagon for 2 tribes, right? There were 12 tribes, there was only 6 wagons. V'shur lechad, and there was 1 ox that would draw the wagon. and you should sacrifice it in front of the Mishkan. Here it goes. What should they offer? So it says, Bayom to the first day who was sacrificed was Nachshon ben Aminadav. It says that was the day that there were 10 crowns. This is also the day that Nadav and Avihu offered their offering, the tragic offering. What should they sacrifice? They sacrifice 1 plate of silver that weighed 130 units. A mizrak echad kesef, a mizrak, like a pouring thing, one that weighed 70 shekels, shekel HaKodesh. Both of them will be filled with meal offering that's filled with, that's soaked with oil. 1 spoon that weighs 10 units of gold filled with incense. 1 ox, 1-year-old, a male sheep, a ram, a keves echad, ben shanato, also a ram, but this is 2 years old, this is 1-year-old, for an ola, a sirizim, a goat for a chatas, and they would also bring a peace offering, 2 cows, 5 rams, 5 rams, 5 other sheep, 5 the other types of sheep. In any case, 1-year-old, and that's what Nachshon ben Aminadav brought. Everyone brought the same thing. This thing is going to be repeated 12 times. You read it over and over and over again, the exact same thing. Why do we read? What is the implication about this? Rashi says it. Read this Rashi. I want to go back to the blessing of the Kohanim. I want to go back to the blessing of the Kohanim. Here we go. All right, this is the blessing. The first blessing has in it 3 words. Yivarech Hashem v'yishmerecha. Second blessing has in it 5 words. Ya'er Hashem panav elecha v'yichaneka. The third blessing has in it 7 words. Yisa Hashem panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom, and give you peace. Let's just have a little look over here at the okay, let's just see what we can do. Let's just do we'll do the Balatorium, okay? We'll do the Balatorium. Now, the Rambam has a beautiful explanation over here, what we say according to Kabbalah. We can just do this one. I already explained, Rambam said, I already explained what this blessing is exactly. He said, God commanded that Aaron should bless them, but this is also for all future generations. This is the blessing that he should bless them when the Mishkan was this, because that's where God commanded the blessings to be from the temple. And they would be forever. Like the rabbis say, was a big difference. In the tabernacle, they said with the Shem HaMeforish. Now, this Shem HaMeforish, there's different opinions. I don't really know what it is, the Shem HaMeforish. Nobody knew what it was. It was something that was a secret thing. And the Kohanim would say it out loud. They would say it to the people. It seems that people would forget it afterwards they said it. It says there's some people say it was the name that had 35 letters, and some say it has 72 letters. The Rambam says that they had to teach the Kohanim to do it. It took them a long time to teach them how to say this blessing. And so they would say it with the name of Meforish and the God's explicit name, they would say in the temple, but in the Medina, but outside of the temple, they would say the Kinui. They would use one of the names that, like we do. We use God's name. Okay, let's have a look. Yivrech Hashem, God should bless you and protect you. Here we have the Balaturim. This corresponds to Abraham. We'll see. First of all, the first letters are Kaf Vav. That the gematria 26, which that corresponds to the name of God, which are 4 letters. Yud Ke Vav Ke. Here, see, look, Yud, Yivarecha Hashem V'Yishmerecha. That's 26. What about the last letters? Here's the last letters. They add up to 20, 20. That's 40, 45. So let's see. The Softev is the last letters. That adds up to 45, which corresponds to the name of God, which is 45 letters. Shema. And this is Hashem Yishmor Tzeizcha Ovecha. That's what it means. God should protect your going and your coming, the first letters and the last letters. Why are the 3 letters? This corresponds to the merit of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And in this, there are 15 letters. 15 letters, let's count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. 15 letters, that's right. This corresponds to 15 letters corresponding to the name of, this is for the sake of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that they saw each other, they lived together in the world for 15 years. In other words, Abraham was 15 years when Jacob, the third of the fathers, passed away. So they were all living together for 15 years. Does that make any sense? Just 1 second. Could not possibly be. Yitzchak, was 15 years old. Not Avram. That's ridiculous. Yitzchak was 15 years old when Yaakov passed away. Can that be? Also not. 1 minute. This is I'm making a big mistake over here. Okay, let's do it again. I didn't think this thing through. Yaakov was 15 years old. Jacob was 15 years old when Abraham passed away. That's how it goes. Sorry. Jacob was 15 years old when Abraham passed away. Obviously, Abraham couldn't have been 15 years old when he passed away. Abraham only gave birth to Yitzchak when he was 100 years old, so it couldn't be. So when Yaakov was 15 years old, Abraham passed away. In other words, they all lived together 15 years. Okay, sometimes the head does not work sometimes. But the merit of these tribes with the Avos, and the merit also, if you take the tribes, how many tribes were there? 12, and you add on to the fathers, Avos, that's 15, 12 with the 3 fathers. That's Yivarechacha, that's in the merit of Abraham. It's written by Abraham, Beit Hashem, that God should bless him. Okay, 3 blessings of Arechacha. God says that God will make you a blessing. Anyone who blessed Abraham will be a blessing. This, this says, the Balaturim, this corresponds to Yitzchak. And why? Because Yitzchak was willing to sacrifice himself and to be killed. And God, actually, he says that his soul did leave his body and God opened up his eyes. And that's what it means, Yo'er Hashem panav elecha, that God, even though that it says that Yitzchak actually left this world, was taken, and God re-enlivened him. Yo'er Hashem panav, he opened up his eyes again. That's what it means. Also, it brings also that he was like an Olat Riyah, that it says you have to go up to the Holy Temple and see God and be seen by God, but you have to bring a sacrifice. That's what Abraham did with Yitzchak. Yitzchak was his sacrifice to see God with. So that's what it means, Riyah, to see. Yo'er Hashem panecha. And Yo'er means God will shine and make see. And finally, Yisah Hashem panecha, says Shalom, that God will give you peace. This is corresponds to Yaakov. That Yaakov lifted up his feet, it said, V'shavti b'shalom el beis avi. Yisah means he lifted up. It says Yaakov lifted up his feet when he went, was Yisah Esraglav. This is after he saw the ladder standing on the ground, as this vision of God. There's 7 letters in there corresponding to the main number of the 7 of the tribes that were born in the course of 7 years. And there's 25 letters, which corresponds to Ko Tomar Lebeit Yaakov. So you should say. So 25. Okay, so briefly, maybe a little bit too briefly, we went over the jobs of Gershon and Merari. That's how the portion began. And the Sota, and how that corresponds to Adam and Chava. And the Nazir, that this is a Jew that decides he wants to make himself holy to God. And this is also, by the way, other places it also says that this is the fixing of the sin of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, because some people say that the tree of knowledge of good and evil, that tree was grapes, and that fixes it up. The Nazir, he refrains from eating grapes and wine. And then we learned a little bit about the blessing of the Kohanim. That's what we're learning here. And after that, we learn about the offerings that all the tribes brought up. I advise you to read, there's a very beautiful Rashi over here where he explains the offering of the second day, the second tribe to bring, which was Yisachar, right? Here. First day was Nachshon ben Aminadav, and then there was, right, Yisachar. Where is this? Here. On the second day was Nisanel ben Sora, the son of Yisachar, and he brought the sacrifice. He brought the exact same thing as Nachshon did, but for some reason Rashi saw it fit to explain the mystical meaning or the metaphorical meaning of all of these numbers and offerings and sacrifices that he made. Very, very beautiful, worthwhile to read it. God bless you all. Tomorrow at 8:50 in the morning, 8:15, we will continue the Sikha of the Rebbe that we learned from Davar Malchut. Have a good day with Mashiach now. Shalom Uvracha.